Is there a housing emergency on the horizon in the Scottish borders?
Nobody seems to care. We've been looking for, 16 months now.
Demand has increased substantially throughout the entire term, and stock is at an all-time low.
Over 100 people bidding for a single property.
Sleeping in the car, renting a caravan, or seeing if we could buy a tent.
The rental market is in desperate need of more properties. It's turning into a bidding war as too many tenants scramble for too few homes.
And they told me a week before my course was due to finish that we weren't successful. And I later found out that actually we'd been rent gazumped. And I'd heard of mortgage gazumping and house prices gazumping, but never rent. So the person who was successful had actually offered £200 more a month than us.
Angie and her husband were moving to Hawick from Exeter after she got a job in the ambulance service.
So I had 7 days before I was starting at my local station, and we still had nowhere to live. And panic had completely set in. So I put a very long begging plea on Facebook, and a wonderful landlady contacted me and said she was renting. The person that was going to be renting it had all fallen through, and she actually pushed it. So I moved in here the day before I was due to start at my local station. If she hadn't have given us this property, we were considering our options, and they included sleeping in the car, renting a caravan, or seeing if we could buy a tent, just so I could start work in the ambulance service.
And they're not alone. There is a massive amount of demand on the rental market at the moment, and there's simply not enough places to go around. And while potential tenants have a snapshot of this, it's letting agents that have the full picture.
My colleagues did put on 2 properties in Galashiels just before a weekend a few weeks ago, and they came in on the Monday to 147 inquiries for just 2 local properties. Now, when every property is getting that, and then 40 plus viewings and 10 plus applications, obviously you're having to turn away so many more people than you normally would have to. Having no stock there and tenants crying out, it just becomes, it's more emotionally hard.
In August this year, Rightmove advertised 41 properties across the Scottish borders for rent. Cullen Kilshaw dealt with 19 of those. Before the month was over, they had all been snapped up. There's not a lot of alternatives. If the private sector is full, the next option is social housing.
The housing system operates as a whole, so when one sector gets squeezed, that demand and that interest just appears elsewhere. And we've certainly seen in the social rented sector lots of people that would otherwise be looking at a private let with a lack of availability. They've been inquiring with us and seeking some of our properties too. For every property that we have available, we advertise them and people bid in. So people who have pre-registered with us then bid in. So we have for every property multiples of people who are looking to live in that property, and for some new built properties that can be over 100 people bidding for a single property. So we know that the demand far outstrips the supply.
In order to build more, to help tackle this demand, is the only answer then to get more money from the government, which would then match what you can borrow?
Yeah, well, I mean, ultimately, yes, I think that is the option. I mean, we are, as I say, it's difficult to be too critical because we have very good capital support from the Scottish Government, and that enables us to do the things that we do. I think that helps us provide social rented housing, so that's the most affordable housing. But I think some of the other challenges about if you're one of those people that have bid for one of our properties but don't get them, then where do you go? So we want to provide a bit of range of choice and variety in our homes as well, to providing things in the intermediate market sector, things like mid-market rent.
It's no surprise that homelessness has increased as a result of growing demand in private rents and social housing.
Scotland's housing emergency didn't happen overnight. It's not related to COVID. It didn't happen because of anything that's happened in the last couple of years. This has been a couple of generations in the making. And we need to decide now whether we want to be the generation that ends homelessness and ends the housing emergency as we know it. Right now we have record numbers of homeless households, record numbers of open cases, which means that more and more people who go into the homelessness system are struggling to get back out again, and that shows that there just simply aren't the homes to give them that permanent place to live.
As we've heard, there are not enough homes available in the private rental market, leading to a bidding war between tenants. And that in turn is leading to more people turning to social housing, where there also aren't enough properties to go around. And that leads to more people facing homelessness. Shelter Scotland and Eildon Housing both say building more homes is one way of addressing this growing pressure, but house building is more expensive than ever.
Yeah, house building costs have absolutely rocketed, particularly post-COVID. There's a number of factors in there that are beyond the government's or local authorities' control. However, one area where costs have rocketed recently, and certainly in my time in the industry, is the bureaucratic costs associated with obtaining planning permission. Planning permission is something every development needs to have. Its statutory period for a planning application is 2 months. We have, over the last 3 or 4 years, noticed that our average time to obtain planning permission is 60 weeks.
So you think if planning conditions are eased, it will help speed up the process to get new houses built, but it also potentially make it cheaper and get more developments approved as well?
Exactly. And I don't think it will make any real difference to the quality of the development, because a number of these conditions are not appropriate to small, pressurised rural communities.
Despite the rising costs, politicians feel building more homes is the obvious answer.
So there's been concerns throughout my time as an MP and as an MSP in terms of the availability of housing, both private sector housing and also social housing. There's been an 87% drop in the last year in terms of new houses being built here in the Borders, and I think a large part of that is because the Scottish Government has slashed the housing budget. So for housing associations wanting to build more social housing, more affordable housing, the funding is just not there in the way that it used to be.
Well, I think it should be a priority. In the Scottish Government's £55 billion budget, new housing should be a priority, because it's not just immoral that we have children, frankly, being forced to live in caravans with their families. It's actually bad for the economy. The South of Scotland Enterprise Agency have said that the lack of housing is a barrier to economic growth in the region, because when people come to the region to work, they can't find affordable housing. So if we want to grow the economy and grow the Scottish Government's budget, then we need to invest in new housing in the region.
In a statement, the Scottish Government says Scotland has seen more than 40% more affordable homes delivered per head of population than England and more than 70% more than in Wales. We remain committed to making £3.5 billion available for affordable housing over the current parliamentary session as part of our ambitious plans to deliver 110,000 affordable homes by 2032. The number of affordable homes completed in Scotland in the year to end March 2023 is the highest annual figure since 2000. The shortage of housing has not happened overnight, and there are clear calls for more houses to be built to ease this demand. And until then, it will leave people unable to find anywhere or stuck in unsuitable homes, affecting their everyday lives. Like Mandy, who's been searching in Peebles for years.
Nobody seems to care. You know, whenever you speak to somebody, they're like, "Oh, have you thought about moving to Gala?" And it's like, well, Gala's no different, but you want me to uproot 2 kids who are at school here, their dads are here, and you want me to commute to my job in Peebles? It's not feasible. I kind of feel like a lot of people like myself are really struggling locally, and we're almost getting pushed out of the town because the prices of the private rents are so extortionate, because, you know, supply is so short and demand is so high that private landlords are charging between £1,100 and £1,400 for a 3-bed house.
Some charities say housing in Scotland and the UK is reaching a crisis point. And with any change needing time to take effect, it's going to get much worse before it gets better. Isla Todd, ITV News.